much. No, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on the topic. Yes, that's true. A lot of women promised they were going to name their next child after me. That's all I have to say. No, I'm on the faculty at Hopkins. I'm actually on leave. I've been on the faculty there 30 years, and I've done research not related to cancer, but I am of the physicians on the Hill. I'm the only one who's been an investigator on an NIH grant. It was fetal cerebral blood flow, for those of you who might be interested in what it was. Probably not. But one of the things that we have to get right, and you know, the comment was absolutely on target, that treatments for a variety of different diseases are entirely different from when I started my career 30 years ago. I mean, just entirely different. Things that we would never have dreamed of. So the question is, how do we keep that progress going? Because you look at the chart, I mean, that's not down at zero, that mortality. I mean, that 5-year survival is not at 100%, or you know, age-adjusted survival is not 100%. You know, how do we get there? And I believe we get there by continuing the novel approaches, the novel discoveries that we're making. So the question is, how do we make novel discoveries? How are novel discoveries made? And then how can we apply that kind of ideas to what we're doing with biomedical research here in the United States? Because we are, without a doubt, the leader in the world. And you know, there are people who will say, oh my gosh, look over your shoulder, China, things like that. Look, we spend $120 billion a year on biomedical research. That's about 47% of the world total. China spends $8 billion. Okay, now they were up from $2 billion several years ago, but they're still a blip on the screen. We are going to be the drivers of the cure for cancer, I'm convinced. But how do we get our system adjusted so that we increase that likelihood? One of my passions is to get the NIH, to get some reforms going at the NIH so that we're more likely to make this whole biomedical system work, where the NIH does a lot of the basic science research and then at some point really hands it off to probably public-private partnerships or private companies to go to commercialize the product, but that we encourage novel new discoveries. And it's interesting because if you look at what we need to do, for instance, over at the NIH, one thing we need to do is we need to encourage young investigators. We need to get young people with novel thoughts in the system, trained, and putting those thoughts on the table. So when I started 30 years ago, the average age of a R01, which is the premier grant, the individual grant over at the NIH, was in the mid-30s. It's now in the mid-40s over 30 years with kind of a straight line increase. And at some point, you know, some of you may say, well, that's all right, you're actually funding more experienced people. But it's interesting because those of you, I look out here, and there are a lot of young faces here. If I ask you, when do you think the average age is of the person who wins a Nobel Prize, when they made that discovery, what was their average age? Because when they get it, they're actually several years later. Turns out it's in their mid-30s. That's it. That's the peak. Once you pass your mid-30s, I'm sorry, I'm 58, I'm sorry, I am much less likely to make a groundbreaking discovery with it. In fact, many of you will say, gee, I didn't think it was that late, because you think of Steve Jobs, you think of Microsoft, you think of Zuckerberg, you think of people who in their 20s, who in their early 20s thought way outside the box and solved a problem. Now, it wasn't cancer. It was whether or not you could carry a personal computer around on your hip and expect that to be the standard. You know, the fact is, within a few years, 80% of the world will have what amounts to a small personal computer on them because of one very forward thinker. Actually, there are a couple of them in the company, forward-thinking people in their 20s. This is what we've got to do to medical research. We have to make sure that we encourage young people who are interested in solving this kind of problem. We have to give them the venue and the funding to think way outside the box, because I really think, look, I'm convinced that if I live the average age of someone who's 58, that it is possible that we will cure a lot of cancer within my lifetime, but it's going to be through novel therapies. Because again, and we've waited this. I remember as a medical student, one of the professors at Hopkins saying, "Oh, we're within 25 or 30 years of curing cancer." And look, that's what we always hope. But I think now we really are. I mean, we really have the fundamental knowledge base with some outside thinking, and you hear about it all the time. You can't pick up the newspaper, for a couple of weeks without reading about some breakthrough in how we're treating some disease with a totally new novel approach. Whether it's a new, exciting, a new type of bacteria, antibiotic that was discovered, about a month and a half ago, that actually may, knock on wood, keep our fingers crossed, solve some of the antibiotic resistance problems we have, or the kind of therapies that really, literally, can cure people with cancer that we thought unthinkable. Because you're right, lung cancer used to be, that's it. You got lung cancer, put your affairs in order. Totally different now. We know there's subsets of people who literally will be cured. And that's exciting. So I think that if we all get together and we decide that that's a good goal to have, that the United States actually should focus resources on biomedical innovation and treatment for a variety of reasons. I tell people, look, you know, it's the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do. But besides that, you know, there are a lot of people in this world who are going to come into the middle class in this the next 20, 30 years. Probably 500 million people in India and China are going to enter the middle class. When they enter the middle class, they want health care. That's one thing lower classes around the world don't really have, access to good health care. They're going to get it. When they get it, they're going to need the treatments. They're going to need the cures. They're going to need the instruments, the devices. We should be in the position to provide that to the world. Not only because it's the right thing to do, so to give everyone a chance at a healthy, long life, but that actually, through our system, we can actually, through our system of commercialization, we can actually make it very good for the American economy. So I'm excited about making some adjustments over at the NIH, getting them on board to saying, look, we've got to restore a focus to the basic science that no commercial enterprise is really going to do. I mean, no commercial company is really going to invest a lot in basic science because the yield is too far off and too uncertain. And then say that we have to make sure that the young, brightest minds who want to solve these kind of problems actually see a pathway and a career pathway to do it. So again, that's what I hope to bring to the discussion over the next few years. So stay tuned. I know we have 21st Century Cures coming out of Energy and Commerce Committee, hopefully this year, that will begin some of this refinement in how we do medical research and how one day, hopefully, you know, within the next 30 years, as I heard 30 years ago, but I think it's possible that we will say, yeah, we actually have cured many, many forms of cancer, if not through a basic understanding of the underlying mechanism, have the potential of cure of all of it. So thank you very much for having me make a few comments.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.